My name is Holly F. Moore, and I was 29 years old when my boyfriend told me he was going silent for a week to see whether I would fight for him. His name was Caleb Dawson, and we had been together for 3 years. I believed our relationship was stable, real. The kind of love built through ordinary acts rather than dramatic declarations. I remembered when his allergy medication needed refilling. I learned his grandmother's pasta recipe because it made him smile. I never forgot our anniversary, and I had already begun saving for the future we discussed late at night. Apparently, Caleb saw stability differently. It happened on a Tuesday evening while I was preparing stir-fry in our kitchen. Ginger and garlic filled the apartment, but the silence between us felt heavy. Caleb sat at the island scrolling through his phone, answering every question with one word. "Everything okay?" I asked. "I'm fine." I had learned that fine usually meant I was expected to keep asking until I guessed correctly. "Is it work? Your mother?" He put down his phone and looked at me. "It's us, Holly." My hand stopped above the cutting board. "What about us? Don't you ever feel like we're just going through the motions?" He gestured around the apartment we had decorated together. The photographs, books, and furniture chosen through dozens of small compromises. "This is our life," I said. "I love our life. That's the problem. You're content." I stared at him. "You say that like it's something terrible. You don't fight for me anymore." The accusation was so unfair that I almost laughed. I had supported him when his father was hospitalized. I handled the landlord dispute that nearly cost us our apartment. I planned dates, remembered appointments, and rearranged work whenever he needed help. But Caleb spoke as though none of that counted. "I feel like I'm the only one keeping our emotional connection alive," he continued. "You're reliable, but you don't make me feel chosen. We were looking at rings 2 months ago. That doesn't prove anything." He stood, and that was when I noticed his overnight bag beside the hallway table. This was not an impulsive conversation. He had rehearsed it. "I need to know whether you're truly committed," he said. "So I'm going silent for a week. No calls. No texts. I'm staying with my friend Jason. You're giving me a test? I'm giving you an opportunity." "To do what?" "To prove that you care enough to win me back." The smugness in his voice chilled me. "You're standing in our apartment, Caleb. Why should I have to win back someone who hasn't left? If you love me, you'll understand." He picked up his bag. "Don't contact me. I want to see whether you put in the effort without being told." Then he walked out. For the first hour, I stood in the kitchen staring at the closed door. The vegetables burned in the pan while I replayed every conversation from the previous months. Had I become complacent? Had I mistaken routine for intimacy? That night, I barely slept. I stared at his empty side of the bed, wondering what fighting for him was supposed to look like. Flowers? Endless calls? Showing up outside Jason's house and begging? By Wednesday evening, confusion had hardened into clarity. Caleb had not asked me to solve a problem with him. He had created a problem so he could watch me panic. He wanted proof that my emotional stability depended entirely on his presence. So I gave him exactly what he requested: silence. I muted his notifications, went to the gym, and posted a photograph of the sunset from the locker room window. No caption, just one peaceful moment from my own life. Minutes later, Caleb called. I watched his name flash across the screen until the call ended. Then he called again. This time, I answered. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Why is your Instagram normal?" I said nothing. "I'm over here questioning our relationship and you're at the gym posting sunsets. Why aren't you blowing up my phone? Don't you miss me?" There it was. The truth beneath the test. He had never wanted distance. He wanted pursuit. "You asked for silence and space," I said calmly. "I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant." His breathing became uneven. "You wanted to see me beg. Instead, you gave me enough quiet to understand what this relationship had become." "Holly, stop being dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being clear." I took one slow breath. "We're done." Then I ended the call, blocked his number, and walked outside beneath the same sunset that had ruined his plan. The silence was no longer his punishment. It was my freedom. The moment I blocked Caleb, I went home and started packing his belongings. Not mine. His. I pulled empty boxes from the storage closet and moved through the apartment with a calm efficiency that surprised me. His expensive skincare products went into one box. His novels, headphones, framed photographs, and collection of watches went into another. I did not throw anything. I did not damage anything. I simply removed every trace of him from the space he had treated like a stage for his emotional experiment. By midnight, the boxes were stacked beside the front door. Then I texted my friend Megan. "Can you be here tomorrow at 7? Caleb is collecting his things. I won't be home." Her reply came immediately. "What happened?" "We broke up." "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Then I'll be there." The next evening, I stayed at a coffee shop until Megan confirmed Caleb had left. According to her, he arrived expecting me to be waiting. He looked around the apartment, saw the boxes, and asked whether I was seriously ending 3 years over one misunderstanding. Megan told him she understood perfectly. He tried to leave several things behind, claiming he would return later. Megan made him take everything. When I came home, the apartment felt larger. I expected grief to crash over me. Instead, I felt relief. Caleb's test had not destroyed our relationship. It had exposed it. For years, I had been adjusting myself around his moods. I chose restaurants based on whether he seemed restless. I declined plans with friends because he might want company. I stopped painting after he joked that my landscapes looked like something from a retirement home art class. Without him, those small abandoned parts of me began returning. I went back to the climbing gym. The first session left my arms shaking, but I loved the exhaustion. It came from effort, not emotional confusion. I bought new paints and spent an entire Saturday creating a messy mountain landscape. It was imperfect and bright and entirely mine. At work, my concentration sharpened. 2 weeks after the breakup, my manager called me into her office. "The Henderson account has been your best work," she said. "The senior analyst position is yours." The raise was substantial. I walked out holding the promotion letter and realized Caleb would have found a way to make the moment about him. He would have complained about my hours or asked whether the new salary meant we could upgrade his car. Instead, I called Megan. She screamed loudly enough that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Caleb learned about the promotion through mutual friends. An unknown number texted me that night. "Congratulations. I always knew you could do it. We should talk." I blocked it. The following week, another number left a voicemail. "Holly, it's me. I made a stupid mistake. I was scared. I miss you. Please call." His crying sounded almost convincing, but apology without accountability was only another test. He never said, "I manipulated you." He said, "I was scared." He never said, "I wanted you to suffer." He said, "I miss you." Everything was still about what he needed. Then his public campaign began. A mutual friend sent me a screenshot of Caleb's social media story. It showed him sitting alone in a dim bar beneath the caption, "Some people cannot handle a partner who knows their worth." Another post read, "Leveling up after being abandoned." He told people I had experienced a breakdown and ended the relationship because I failed his communication exercise. At first, some friends believed him, then they heard what the exercise actually involved. "So he left for a week to see whether you'd beg?" one coworker asked. "Yes." "And he got angry after 2 days because you didn't?" "Yes." She stared at me. "That is not communication." Slowly, his version collapsed under the weight of its own absurdity. 2 months after the breakup, our mutual friend Nathan asked me to meet for a drink. He spent the first 10 minutes discussing work before finally placing his glass down. "Caleb is not doing well." I nodded. "He misses you. He knows the test was stupid." "That's unfortunate." Nathan frowned. "Don't you think ending everything was extreme?" "No. It was only one mistake. It was one deliberate act that revealed how he saw me." Nathan shifted uncomfortably. He thought you would fight for him. I did fight. For what? My self-respect. He opened his mouth, but I continued. Caleb created a test I could only pass by surrendering my dignity. I chose not to participate. Nathan looked down at his drink. He is miserable. I am not responsible for his feelings anymore. The sentence sounded harsh, but it was true. I changed the subject. By the end of the evening, Nathan understood the boundary. He never brought Caleb up again. Over the next few months, I moved into a brighter apartment with large windows and a view of the city. Every object inside it reflected my choices. My paintings hung on the walls. Climbing gear rested near the door. There was no empty space waiting for Caleb. There was only room for the woman I had become after he left to test whether I could live without him. The answer was becoming clearer every day. I could. And I was happier than I had been in years. 6 months after Caleb walked out to test me, he found me at the Grind, a coffee shop near my new apartment. I was sitting by the window with my laptop open, reviewing a report for work. Sunlight spread across the table, and my half-finished latte had already gone cold. A shadow fell over the screen. I looked up. Caleb stood there in a black coat, trying hard to resemble the man I remembered. But the illusion was fragile. His face looked thinner, his eyes tired, and the confidence he once wore so easily had cracked around the edges. "Holly," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I closed my laptop. He interpreted that as permission and sat across from me without waiting for an answer. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then the words rushed out of him. "I understand now. It was stupid. Childish. I shouldn't have tested you." I remained silent. He leaned forward. "You proved your point. You punished me enough. We can stop this now." That sentence confirmed he still did not understand. "This is not punishment," I said. His expression tightened. "I have been miserable for 6 months. Doesn't that matter to you? We were together for 3 years. Of course it mattered once." Once, his voice cracked. I watched the pleading in his face turn slowly into frustration when I did not comfort him. "So you're really going to throw everything away because of one mistake?" "You did not make one mistake." "What else did I do?" "You designed a situation where you expected me to panic, beg, and prove my love by surrendering my dignity. I was scared." "No. You were curious about how much power you had." Caleb shook his head. "That is not fair. You left with an overnight bag and instructions not to contact you. Then you called after 2 days because I looked too happy online." His eyes dropped. "You said I needed to fight for you," I continued. "And you were right." Hope flickered across his face. I leaned back. "I had to fight for my peace." The hope disappeared. "And I won." Caleb stared at me as though he had not expected the conversation to continue without his control. "You really don't love me anymore?" "Not in the way you want." "How can 3 years disappear that quickly?" "They did not disappear. They taught me what I will never accept again." His jaw tightened. "You have changed." "I know. You used to care." "I still care enough to hope you become healthier, but I do not care enough to return." The answer wounded him. For a moment, he looked genuinely lost. Then the old anger surfaced. "You think you're better than me now because you got a promotion and moved into a nicer apartment." "No. You are enjoying this. I am enjoying my life." "That is not the same thing." "It is when my life used to revolve around managing your feelings." His face hardened. "I made one bad choice, Holly. You made a choice because you believed I would always remain available afterward." He had no answer. I slipped my laptop into my bag. Caleb watched me. "So that is it?" "Yes." "You won't even give me another chance?" "No." He laughed bitterly. "You're colder than I ever realized." "I am calmer than you ever allowed me to be." I stood and placed money beside my coffee. Caleb remained seated, looking smaller than he had when he approached. Before leaving, I met his eyes, one final time. "The silence you gave me was the best gift you ever offered." His expression twisted. "You cannot be serious." I heard myself clearly for the first time in years. I lifted my bag onto my shoulder. You asked me to prove that I cared. I discovered I cared more about protecting myself. Holly, please. We are a closed chapter, Caleb. Stop trying to reread it. I walked toward the door. My phone buzzed before I reached the sidewalk. It was a message from Megan. Hiking group Sunday at 9. Bring the good coffee. I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Behind me, Caleb remained inside the coffee shop with the apology he had expected to turn into reconciliation. But apologies do not erase manipulation, and regret does not create entitlement. I had spent 6 months rebuilding every part of myself he had convinced me to neglect. My career was thriving. My paintings filled my home. My friendships felt honest again. I no longer checked my phone wondering whether Caleb was upset, distant, or preparing another test. His silence had once felt like abandonment. Now his voice felt like interruption. And I was done allowing it to disturb my peace. The weeks after the coffee shop confrontation passed without another message from Caleb. At first, I expected him to find a new number, send another friend, or appear somewhere he knew I would be. That had become his pattern. Apology, pressure, anger, silence. Then another attempt when he believed enough time had passed. But this time, nothing came. The quiet felt different because I no longer waited for it to end. I kept working, climbing, painting, and rebuilding the friendships I had neglected during our relationship. My promotion brought more responsibility, but it also brought confidence. I no longer apologized for wanting a career, personal space, or an evening that belonged only to me. Several months later, Megan invited me to a small dinner with friends. Halfway through the meal, Nathan mentioned Caleb. He moved back in with his parents, he said carefully. I continued cutting my food. Okay. Nathan looked surprised by my lack of reaction. He lost his apartment. Apparently, he spent months waiting for you to come back instead of adjusting his finances. That sounds like something he will have to solve. Megan gave Nathan a warning look, but he continued. He's seeing a therapist now. I hope it helps. I meant it. Not because I wanted reconciliation, because becoming healthier would make Caleb less likely to hurt someone else the way he hurt me. Nathan told us Caleb had finally admitted the relationship test came from something Jason had shown him online, a video claiming that withdrawing affection could reveal whether a partner truly cared. Caleb expected flowers, dozens of calls, and some dramatic public gesture. Instead, he received boxes containing his belongings. The image almost made me laugh. He said losing you made him realize how much you did, Nathan added. That was never hidden. No, he just thought it was guaranteed. That sentence stayed with me. The problem had never been that Caleb failed to see my effort. He saw it every day. He simply assumed it would continue no matter how he treated me. A year after the breakup, I returned to the restaurant where we had celebrated our first anniversary. Not because I wanted nostalgia, but because Megan's birthday dinner happened to be held there. The room looked smaller than I remembered. So did the memories. There was no magical ache, no desire to recreate what we had. I only saw a table where a younger version of me had once sat, convinced that loving someone deeply meant giving them unlimited access to my patience. That woman deserved compassion. But I was relieved I no longer lived as her. After dinner, I walked home beneath clear city lights. My apartment windows glowed several floors above the street. Inside were half-finished paintings, climbing shoes by the door, and photographs of friends who never asked me to prove I cared through suffering. The life waiting for me was quiet. Not empty. Not boring. Quiet in the way a safe home is quiet. One evening, Caleb sent a final letter through Nathan. I almost returned it unopened. Instead, I read it once. He wrote that he understood why I left. He admitted he had confused anxiety with passion and control with reassurance. He said he was sorry for treating my devotion like something he could test without risking its loss. The final line read, I wanted proof you couldn't live without me. Instead, I proved you were better without me. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. I did not answer. Some apologies deserve acknowledgement. Others are complete simply because the person finally tells themselves the truth. Caleb gave me a week of silence because he wanted to watch me break. It took only 2 days for me to understand that the relationship had already been broken for much longer. I did fight for something. I fought for the part of myself that had grown tired of performing love for someone who measured devotion through pain, and I won. Not because Caleb regretted losing me. Not because his life became smaller while mine expanded. I won because his approval no longer determined whether I felt worthy. The silence he created as a weapon became the doorway to my freedom. And once I walked through it, I never looked back.